Hi, welcome to the next of a series of workshops we're running on project management. Today, we're going through Agile style project management. So again, I'm joined by Steve Page, Director of Page Consulting, who will be taking you through the workshop today. As always, we ask for as many questions as you can think of. We try and hopefully make it as interactive as we possibly can with the limitations that we've got at the moment. So please do ask your questions. We've got plenty of time to go through any questions you might have on this or any of the other sessions we've got coming up or we've been through. You should see a little questions section on your dashboard. So just put them in there and we'll come to them at the end. Just to say that this is a funded program by the Humber Business Growth Hub as part of my Grow My SME program, and there are plenty of other workshops we've got coming up. We've got some really exciting ones scheduled in, so please do go and have a look at what ones are scheduled. Get yourself booked onto those going forward, because as I say, there's really good support coming up on those. So without further ado, I'll pass you on to Steve, who will take you through today's workshop. So Steve.
Fine, thank you very much, Peter. Good morning and welcome to all of those of you who have found the time to come and join us this morning. We are going to be spending the next couple of hours looking at project management. We'll be touching on the traditional styles of project management, but our focus really is going to be around agile project management and the sort of applications where this technique is going to be beneficial, where the traditional approaches tend to be less well performing. So before we sort of dive into the detail, just a little bit of background about myself, just so that you can sort of see where I've come from. I'm a professionally qualified chief engineer with a master's degree in business and a whole host of other qualifications on that sort of business management side of things, as well as coaching. My early days were working in the aerospace industry for British Aerospace, which is now BAE Systems, and I was quite fortunate to work my way up through the ranks, youngest ever chief engineer running the training systems and simulation division, and then moved on into project management, where I was the project manager looking after all of the future R&D, innovation and technology development programs, which was sort of £100 million plus a year in total investments, and sort of really got very heavily involved in project management methodologies and techniques, where we were searching for all sorts of different ways in which we could bring our programs on time, in budget, and to the quality that our customers were looking to receive from us. So that's given me quite a few years of experience, and that's probably contributed to the fact that I was sort of grey by the age of 40. Such were the problems that we were having with some of the project methodologies at that time. So it's sort of some of that experience that I'm bringing into play. I've continued to be heavily involved with project management in the sort of second part of my working career, which is running a Page Consulting Limited, which is a Humber-based business consultancy, business support provider, where I've worked with well in excess of 1,000 businesses regionally to help them organise themselves and to grow rapidly. And quite a large element of that has been in introducing innovative new projects, where we have had some incredibly challenging timescales and constraints that we have had to manage those ideas to market type of programs through to. And if you can get it right, then the rewards are absolutely phenomenal. So that's enough about me. Just wanted to sort of set the scene so that you could see a little bit about my background and how it sort of has a bearing on the topics that we'll be covering today. So what have we got lined up for you? Well, so that's the list of how we're going to break today up. What I would say that Agile project management is quickly gaining popularity in the modern day workplace as a way to complete work in our complex, ever-changing world. Agile thrives in adaptive cultures where team members are quick to change if the outcome is more productive from their work experience. In this webinar, you'll learn about Agile project management, some of its key elements, and the principles that lie behind it. And we'll briefly touch on how you might then start to transition into a Agile project management methodology if you are looking to do so, sort of where projects might not be serving you particularly well using the more traditional approach to project management. So, so the topics for today to help us to do that will be to just take a moment back and remind ourselves about some of the issues, the key features associated with the traditional approach to project management, and why some projects don't necessarily perform as well with that particular approach. Now, don't get me wrong, there are lots of programs, projects that can be run incredibly successfully using the traditional approach, but there are those more the innovative R&D, complex development projects that are the ones that the methodology doesn't serve particularly well. And this is where Agile has been able to find a footing and has really sort of grown and prospered in those particular areas. So we'll have a little look at Agile project management, what it is, and move on into what we call the Agile Manifesto. And that contains some of the core values and guiding principles associated with it. But if you're able to embrace and onboard, then you will be able to transition more across into using the Agile project management methodologies for those particular projects that it's best suited towards. We'll touch on those methodology or that methodology particularly, which is more aligned to the Scrum method than the Kanban, although there are these two fundamental methodologies that overlap significantly. We touched on the Kanban method in the previous webinar. What we're going to be doing now is looking at the other big common one, which is the Scrum-based one. And in a couple of weeks from now, we'll be running a session where we quickly summarize the two methods and compare and contrast them. So sort of having spent quite a bit of time this morning looking at Agile, its core values, its guiding principles, and some of the aspects of the methodology, we'll then just briefly touch on some of the things that you might need to consider in terms of embracing it. As Peter mentioned, what we'll do is we'll pick up any questions and answers at the end, if that's okay with you. So throughout today's webinar, if there are any particular clarifications or things that you might want to ask, if you just use that question function, then you can feed those through to Peter, who will join us back at the end again, where we can have a little bit of a question and hopefully answer some of the questions or views that you have sent through to us. So that's what we've got lined up for today. We'll have a break point, sort of take 10 minutes, sort of mid-morning. I've sort of dropped a little tiny break point in the slide pack, but that's my best guess as to when I think we'll reach that point. It may be a bit before, it may be a little after. So hopefully sometime around about 11 o'clock this morning, we'll take a break, give you the chance to recharge your mugs and just clear your heads for a moment. So let's dive into to the detail and just take a moment to step back and just put the traditional approach to project management into context, because it's when we look at that and where it's good and where it's not so good, that we can start to see the opportunities for other methodologies to come into play. And then we can sort of really see how the Agile project management methodology is different and how it favors certain types of projects better than the traditional one. So, traditional features of project management. For those of you who are project managers and who are sort of living and breathing the world of project management, you'll already have a good grasp and feel for this. But I know not everybody is in that situation who's watching today. So if you'd just forgive me for sort of dropping back down to the basics, so that we can pick everybody up and sort of don't lose them in a whole series of project management jargon and discussion. So traditional project management, what are we talking about here and what's involved with this? Well, there are a number of sort of key features that I just wanted to sort of spell out that sort of really define its characteristics. So, you know, the first one is the blindingly obvious. The traditional approach really adopts a stance where it looks at a group of activities with a clearly defined start point and a clearly defined finish point, and then seeks to work out and put into a plan all of the various activities that might be involved in getting from the start condition through to the results or the deliverable condition at the end. And the management aspect is having set up that framework, set up that plan, acquired information that gives us a good understanding of who's going to be doing what, how long it's going to take, what the various costs are. We can then execute the plan step by step and oversee and monitor it, and have a series of review meetings where we are tracking progress and gathering information such that we can, as project managers, have an oversight and be able to step in as and when things may go wrong. But very much the emphasis and a lot of the responsibility is placed with the project manager to keep well enough connected with all of those involved in a way that they can have the visibility to step in as and when they see things are going wrong. And one of its weaknesses is this reliance upon the stakeholders, those that are particularly involved in detail, communicating where there may be issues, where things might be blocked, where they've overrun or something else has cropped up and they've not been able to give the particular tasks the priority that they had indicated that they might have done in the beginning. So there's a key emphasis that is placed on linear processes, documentation, upfront planning, prioritization. These are all the things that help us put a logical sequenced plan of actions in place. We are able to add additional complexities to try to describe or map the real world as far as interdependencies or interrelationships that might exist between certain activities, insofar as some things can't start until something has been completed beforehand. And if there's a delay in the completion of that thing, then it can have a ripple through across the whole of the program and extend out the project timescale. And we see those critical paths, those things where if there is a delay, then they automatically push everything out. Those critical path analyses as being key as a project manager to try to understand where the risks are so that we can place priorities on certain tasks to avoid critical path creep or slippage occurring. Documentation, because there's so much going on, we can't keep it all in our heads, and therefore need to document minutes, document progress, document activities, and create a whole raft of key performance indicators, display dashboards, as well as other sort of more project management, progress to plan type of metrics. So there can be quite a lot of bureaucracy associated with the overseeing and the management of any particular project. The project managers are quite keen in order for that to happen, because it gives them a better feel for control and visibility as to what it is that they're trying to manage. So traditional project management really has a series of fixed requirements. The project is about producing A, B, and C. Ideally, by a certain time and within a certain budget. But where there is some uncertainty associated with our plan, and there are risks that the plan might not quite be executed in the way that we've drawn it up on our little chart, then they often become the variables in the project equation. So fundamentally, we're working towards achieving the deliverables, and we're trying to do so keeping our time and budget as close to plan as we can from our original estimate. So for every step, there's a tool and a technique that's defined, which helps us as project managers to be able to effectively undertake all of the various management activities that that we might find ourselves having to deal with, whether that is review points where we're calling people together, where that is a problem solving type meetings where we've had a snag, something's got blocked or hasn't been done, and it is creating all sorts of downstream consequences. Delays then mean that the resources might not be available at the time that we might need them to be available. They were when we put the plan together, but individuals have been given other work in other time windows, and we are now looking like we're going to encroach on those. So there's a whole raft of communication and other problem solving techniques that we are well equipped with having to use, and find ourselves using them on quite a frequent basis, particularly where the nature of the project we're trying to manage is one which is a little different, a little unusual, and isn't a sort of tried and tested, we understand it because we've done it time and time and time again, and therefore we've got confidence that what we've described in our plan has borne from many times doing it before, all of those sorts of experiences and performance data we've been able to capture. And what we often see with the traditional project management plan are charts which sort of reflect this cascade or waterfall of activities, where we'll do a block of stuff, get that finished. That then enables us to go over the waterfall, cascade it down into another block of activities, which couldn't start until we were in a position to have completed the first ones. And if we are trying to catch up and we are pushing stuff over the waterfall before things are really ready, then that can have all sorts of ramifications further downstream in terms of us having to do expensive rework late on in the project because things just aren't quite functioning or meeting the quality, or that the specification wasn't quite accurate in every respect, and therefore we have disappointed customers at the end of the project period who are coming back to us with some significant amounts of costly rework being required, and the prospects of that taking a significant amount of time in order to be able to deal with, particularly where we might not have picked it up earlier on. So really, really good approach when you're dealing with projects that you have done before and you've got some high levels of certainty associated with what's going to be happening. The less certain, the more fluid the scope, the more risk associated with them, the more the traditional approach struggles to cope. So the focus very much is on planning. Estimate what you think needs to be done, how long it's going to take, who's going to be involved, what sort of costs are going to be in place, where the interdependencies are, and create these complex work schedules with all of the interrelationships mapped in as your framework, and then you stick to working through that. You try to move heaven and hell in order to try to get the world to fall in line with what you've drawn up on your project schedule. And it doesn't always play ball. So these are the sorts of charts that we often see as project managers. The sort of Gantt chart, there's a network diagram that goes with it as well, which sort of can show it more as a flow chart. But we tend to stick to these sorts of charts where down on the left-hand side, we have got a whole list of tasks. The main task activity, which is shown in black, would show that overall time window, and the various little action or activities would be shown in blue underneath them. You can sort of see there's a little bit of an overlap here, but there's a waterfall or cascading effect. So things are going and they're cascading down and cascading down and cascading down. So we work our way through. We might have some little progress review meetings, formal meetings at the end of each of these stages. We could even have some set in here. The issue with it is, and there's a bit of a trade-off, the more time you spend calling review meetings to check on progress, the more time you're taking away from the people who you're wanting to do the tasks to get on and do them. So if you have too many review meetings, progress is often slow because you are slowing everything down with all of this bureaucracy associated with a sort of over-managing, micromanaging, and therefore that can be quite counterproductive. Might give you a good feeling, but actually the way to speed up is to step back, and by stepping back, you run the risk of things really going wrong and not being able to spot them soon enough because fundamentally, you're the one with the chart, you're the project manager with the responsibility, you're the one who has to oversee it. And if you don't spot it, then chances are it's when a problem occurs that you then get involved. And those delays can be absolutely critical. So for those project managers who have been using the traditional approach, you'll be more than familiar with these sorts of approaches and the sort of constraints that you're working within. So, key benefits, and there are a lot, are that the traditional approach to project management gives us these clearly defined objectives. This project is set out to achieve this, 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 and this within this time and within this budget, hopefully. That you've got controllable processes. You are planning and executing the activities step by step, and that's done in a framework where you've communication meetings and a whole host of tools and techniques associated with it, which give you a series of management processes that you can follow and that others are familiar with. You've got clear documentation, often lots of it. But the fact that you can then go back retrospectively and analyze what went wrong and glean an awful lot of lessons learned from that can be very powerful in terms of helping you to develop better and better plans for the future, should you find that the project nature of the project is repeating in a very similar way. There's a lot more accountability. Clearly, as project manager, you carry a lot of that, but the various individuals that you are assigning tasks to, or their departmental managers, or whoever they might be, fits into a chain of command where there are clear roles, clear responsibilities, and some clear accountability that goes with them. So if something goes wrong, you know who to blame. Not that that's always helpful. So let's just take a moment then to sort of look at some of the types of projects that may come along from time to time. Now, in my career, I've managed both types as chief engineer, training systems and simulation, where we were building a range of training equipment and full blown air flight simulators and all of the computational software and analysis that went with that. It was a fairly repeatable production process. We designed our product range, and when a customer ordered it, then we had some very well-defined production processes that we could go through in order for us to be able to build that. And every one we sold, we would go through that project plan, maybe tweaking it and refining it slightly based on any lessons that we learned. Now, when I moved on into head up the project management of the future projects, fundamentally the stuff that was at the research and development, technology development, high innovation stage, it was a bit of a culture shock for me, because all of the certainty, all of the understanding as to exactly what my plans needed to look like to produce those training equipments suddenly wasn't there with the future projects. You know, we'd never done some of the stuff that we were being asked to do before. So how on earth could we ever identify what was going to be involved, how long it was going to take, whether we got the resources and equipment for it? It was like knitting fog. Your plans were all over the spot. You just really found that that whole sort of a request to manage something that was almost unmanageable. There was a contradiction of terms between R&D and project management. How do the two ever come together? And it took me quite some time to get my head around it, and I was quite quick to be starting to look for alternative ways of managing projects in the R&D world, because those traditional methods just weren't really helping me much at all. So let's just sort of have a little look, see if we can distinguish between the two sort of different types. So where we're looking at these innovation, software development, new product development, where there is a significant amount of uncertainty or innovation involved in them, where we might be looking at the use of new technologies that are as yet unproven, then there are high degrees of uncertainty. So what we're seeing with a range of programs, and more and more and more as time goes by, is that there are this group that are quite unique and are very unclear as to the outcomes that we're looking for. You know, when you're starting to do research and development, you might sort of say, well, I want something that does this. But what exactly might that be? There could be 10 or 15 different ways of doing it. And you might need to explore at least 3 or 4 of those in order to find out the best way to do it. Some might be quick and easy, but others might be incredibly complex and time consuming. But the benefits you get from them, you know, mean that you can't then just filter them out as being something that isn't commercially viable right from the outset. So there are these projects which have got this uniqueness, this lack of clarity about what's involved. They're often subject to rapid technological changes. So you're looking at trying to get something to work, but it needs a different technology platform. And there are a lot of people, a bit like with the coronavirus at the moment, there are a lot of people out there trying to create vaccines, and they're all in a stage of development. Those technologies are progressing quite well. We don't know which ones are going to fall at what particular hurdle points, and therefore we don't necessarily know which technology platform we ought to be looking to be linking with, and therefore have to cover ourselves down by taking time out to maybe get involved with 2 or 3, see which one comes through at the end. Often we're dealing with scarce resources and the constraints for that. There are only a small number of real high caliber specialists in any one particular topic, and therefore they're always in great demand. There's often a greater need for creativity, adaptability. As we start to do research, as we start to develop new products, we learn from our experiences. Now, in your project plan, where you've mapped everything out and you're doing your hardest to try to stick to it, you won't have had the benefit of the things that you learn en route that you can then use to help modify the way that you move forward, because you're still sticking to your plan. So the traditional approach starts to introduce constraints which work against you. And therefore, we're really looking for methodologies that enable you to adapt as you learn from what you're doing. And the additional creativity that often comes from facing problems and having to think out the box in order to be able to deal with them is another issue which is really requiring you to have to sort of roll your plan out as you learn and understand about what you're doing better. Quite knowledge intensive. You know, you're really on the low end of the learning curve, and you're trying to gather as much information and knowledge as you can to get the understanding that you need. You see that massively with some complex software development programs, for example. subject to rapid changes in the market. So you can't hang around forever trying to develop something. You need to be developing it in a relatively quick period of time. So you want to declutter your activities and only focus on the things that matter the most, and not get caught up in all of the bureaucracy, the documentation, the review meeting minutes, the review meetings, the discussions, the communications, and all that sort of stuff, which is sort of wrapped around the traditional approach. And you need to have a soft scope. With your traditional approach, it's that we want A, B, and C. Absolutely clear. We want this training aid, we want this flight simulator, we want this a training instruction, a product pack. And you can therefore go through a process in order to be able to create exactly those deliverables. But with this, we might know what the functionality is, but we don't actually know exactly how it's going to be created. So we often have to have what we call fuzzy boundaries, where we can mold and adjust and creep the scope of the project that we're trying to undertake, because we've learned so much from what we've done so far that we can see that we were heading off in the wrong direction to start with, and now needs to start taking some course correction to be going down a different route and manage ourselves effectively that way. So particularly where we find one particular technology platform isn't going to deliver the goods for us, and therefore we're now looking at having to jump onto another one and put our priorities with that. So you can see that there are situations that come about that really aren't that well suited to the traditional approach to project management. We therefore need to have much more flexible, a more agile approach in order to be able to deal with that. So just to sort of reinforce what I've been saying here, some of the statistics that you see, and I've just sort of chosen ones more really around the software development side of things, because that's an industry that has massively embraced the agile project management, whether that's the Kanban method or the Scrum team method, which have significant overlaps anyway, but there are some subtle differences between the two. When using the traditional approach, these were the sorts of performance levels that we were sort of getting out. Now, a survey of 300 large companies, of which 65% reported innovation projects were grossly over budget, they were behind schedule, and the technology wasn't performing. Research conducted by Computer World reported that 1 out of every 2 projects overruns its budget by 180%, 180% or more. And failed systems projects cost over $100 billion US a year. I mean, that's failure on a grand scale. You know, just one more, 31% of over 8,000 projects were cancelled, whilst only 16 were on schedule and on budget. And those that were cancelled were most probably ones that were in that 180% or more overrun. The prospects of those open checkbook situations going on and just spending money, consuming all sorts of resources with no real confidence that anything of any value might come out from the back of it. You know, you can understand why the plug gets pulled on some of these things. So hopefully that's just sort of set the context. I don't want to paint too black a picture for the traditional project management approach, because it can be incredibly powerful when applied to situations where the planning can be done to a high degree of confidence, and there's some significant repeatability, or there's some significant knowledge associated with the processes and where the risks are and what needs to be done. Then that approach can be absolutely spot on, and I wouldn't suggest that you use anything other than that to deal with those sorts of situations. But where you then enter into the more innovative, less certain, more researchy product development type of domains, then you're looking really for potentially moving to something which is going to be better suited to deal with those sorts of situations. So, Agile project management. It's got its roots in lean manufacturing. Last time, the last webinar, when we looked at the project management using the Kanban method, we saw how that the Toyota production system had, amongst a number of other things, evolved a signboarding index card system that they were using to pass instructions from a sale with a customer, and cascading that through the design, manufacturing and supply chain processes, with a view to pulling all of the various bits and pieces that were needed to come together in order to satisfy that particular product. And by doing so, they avoided all of the clutter of pushing product and material through the stock that then sat in a field somewhere or sat in a big warehouse waiting to be sold. And all of the muddy tied up and all of the inefficiencies and ineffectiveness associated with that approach. And then what we saw was how the software industry had particularly grabbed hold of that Kanban approach and started to evolve it into something that they could use that gave them this much more agile approach, where they were setting up Kanban boards, looking at items that needed to be done, the backlog, items that were being worked on, and items that were being done, and how they could link that process together across their overall supply chain, from raw material right the way through to customer, and have this visualization and this control using these index cards as to how things were running through, and really put the focus on priorities. So what were the things that were sat in the backlog that needed to be pulled through urgently because we'd have a problem otherwise, and creating this prioritized flow process methodology that was highly visible and engaged people into teams that would manage it at that level, and sort of got rid of trying to second guess everything with a project plan and having a single project manager trying to coordinate and organize stuff remotely. So really, agile manufacturing or agile project management is an umbrella for a number of different techniques. The Kanban method being one of them. The other one being the Scrum team method, which has a lot of similarities, but we'll be looking at some of the differences today. So when I talk about agile project management, I'm really talking about an umbrella heading that describes a small number of specific methodologies that operate in a very similar way, but do have some subtle differences to them. And that have really all evolved out from the Toyota analysis of really trying to remove muda or waste from the operation. So I've just tried, and with all the slides that I've created here, which will be available to you afterwards, I've tried to sort of put some of the key information into bullet points for you, so that you've not just got a load of pictures that I've talked over, and when you get the slide pack, they don't really tell you a great deal. We've sort of tried to design the slide pack to be as informative as a reference document for you as we can, without overloading it and cluttering and crowding the slides out accordingly. So yeah, Agile project management has its roots in Lean. The goal of Agile is to produce shorter development cycles and more frequent product releases than the traditional waterfall or cascade project management. This shorter time frame enables project teams to react to changes in the client's needs, more effectively. You can use a few different Agile frameworks, as I've just been outlining. Kanban or Scrum are the two most common, and each Agile methodology will follow some basic processes, core values and principles, and we'll be looking at those this morning. So, what is project management? What is Agile project management, or APM as it's often referred to? If you're new to the Agile project, if you're new to Agile project management, it might look at first like a complex and difficult to manage system. But whether you realize it or not, you're already doing many of the things that Agile requires. A few tweaks and you'll be on your way to shorter development cycles and smaller and more frequent product releases. And we'll sort of touch on that a little bit as we go through this morning. So Agile project management is an iterative approach to managing projects that focuses on breaking down large projects into more manageable tasks, which are completed in short iterations throughout the project lifecycle. So what you can see here is that we're moving away from this large, complicated plan, which is a guess for how we think things could run. And we are breaking the tasks down into activities that we can iterate through a number of times to gain the learning on, and therefore develop our efficiency and effectiveness as we go through. But not only that, what we can start to do is get product through to our customer sooner. So rather than with the traditional project management approach, where we would run the project and at the end of it, deliver all of the deliverables, we can, with more Agile project management, start drip feeding and feeding them through at a much earlier point. And that way we get customer feedback, we build confidence with the customer, or if there is an issue, we get to know about it right early on and we can do something about it, so that we haven't got a massive amount of wasted work on all of the other deliverables that would be following in its footsteps during that project process. So teams that adopt the Agile methodology are able to complete work faster, for the reason I've just been explaining, adapt to changing project requirements, where the customer has identified that something needs to be tweaked, or you yourselves have in terms of optimizing your workflow, or picked up particular quality or other issues associated with what you're doing. So when is APM or Agile Project Management used? So originally created for software development, the Agile approach to project management is quickly being adapted by more than just IT teams. Marketeers, universities, the military, and even the automotive industry are also looking at the Agile methodology and other Agile frameworks to deliver innovative products in uncertain environments. Many organizations can benefit from Agile project management, and it's simple to set up and utilize. In the software world, when a decision to build or further develop an existing technology is made, the end product may be hard to define. Agile allows for that ambiguity because of its flexibility to change direction on a project as work moves into the future. While you can take advantage of Agile software, books, or Agile coaches, each Agile team is unique. And understanding the basics can help you put together an Agile methodology that works for you and your specific team. So this leads us nicely on to the Agile Manifesto. So the Agile Manifesto is really a framework that enables us to define the Agile methodologies. And it's based upon a number of things. One are 4 core values, and the other one are 12 guiding principles. And we're going to spend a little bit of time just having a look at these and sort of chatting over them. So on the 4 core values, let's just take a moment to have a little look at these. So again, we've sort of bullet pointed them down on the slides for ease of reference for you. So the first core value, individuals and interactions between individuals take priority over processes and tools. So this is where we're seeing sort of a movement from away from the plan and more towards people being able to do stuff as and when they can see it. So as sophisticated as technology gets, the human element will always serve as an important role in any kind of project management. Relying too heavily on processes and tools can result in an inability to adapt to changing situations. And it's that preparing the plan and then following the plan approach that we have with the traditional project management methodology that we see for these more innovative developmental projects. Those plans then provide a constraint, a restriction that can be counterproductive. So moving the priority away from those into people and people interactions gives us that flexibility, that adaptability that we're looking for, so we can learn on the job and we can take advantage of that learning as we do things throughout the whole of the project process. So the second core value, working products or software have priority over comprehensive documentation. So as important as documentation is, working software is more important. The customer wants the software to work. They're not buying reams and reams of documentation unless it's a user manual to tell them how to do it, or a tutorial. This value is all about giving the developers exactly what they need to get the job done without overloading. So lean is all about less is more. So less documentation and less time to prepare it is more time to work on the software, get the coding right, and deliver a fully functional piece of code, as opposed to a poorly written one, because they've had so much time having to prepare all the paperwork saying about what they have and haven't been doing. So the third core value, customer collaboration is more important than contract negotiation. Your customers are one of the most powerful assets that you have, whether internal or external customers. Involving them throughout the process can help to ensure that the end product meets their needs more effectively. So by placing focus on understanding what the customer wants and working as hard as you can and as smartly as you can to deliver that, so you're delighting the customer with what you do, is more important than going through reams and reams of clauses and nitty-gritty contract negotiations, which are all designed to try to protect the customer from things not going right. If you put the focus on collaborating with the customer so that you do your very utmost in order to be able to meet those requirements, there should be less need for the contract negotiation frameworks and all of that protection, those layers of protection that the customer is seeking to put in. If they've got the confidence that you're the supplier for them. And the fourth one, responding to change is more important than following the plan. This value is one of the biggest departures from traditional project management. Historically, change has been seen as an expense, a risk, a time delay in terms of traditional project management thinking, and it's something that's really to be avoided at all costs. Agile allows for continuous change throughout the life of any given project. Each sprint, and we'll talk about sprints, provides an opportunity for review and course correction. So hopefully you're starting to see from the core values that we're identifying that the difference between the agile methodology and the more traditional, rigid, we've got a plan, we're working to it, and therefore we're not going to be allowing any change unless that change is forced upon us, and then we're going to have to go back and replan and reschedule and redocument our traditional documentation. So you can sort of quite clearly see how the focus is moving from fixed plan, stick to it, to breaking the task down into small little tasks which you can iterate around with the view to adapting and changing, but feeding through the products much earlier in a collaborative way with the customer. So 12 guiding principles. We'll just cut through a few of these, and then we'll stop and have a break, because I'm quite conscious that I'm throwing quite a lot of stuff at you here, particularly if you're not used to it. Right, so 12 guiding principles. Let's just have a little look at the first one. Our highest priority is to satisfy the customer through early and continuous supply of valuable deliverables. By shortening the time between documenting the project, reporting to your customers, and then getting feedback, you can focus on the real goal of the project, which is delivering what the customer wants, not what you've planned. This sits right at the heart of lean concepts, and it translates its way right through as a fundamental theme into what Agile project management is all about. Now, these guiding principles are ones that you can pick and choose. You know, I'll do number 3 and I'll do number 5, but I'm not going to do the others. If you're going to make this work for you, you have to, and at a senior level, embrace all of the core values and embrace all of the guiding principles. You can't pick and choose the ones that suit you, because you'll not get the methodology to deliver the results for you that you're looking for. So it's all 12, or stick to your traditional project management approach, because there isn't a halfway house with it. We are looking for this full committal and full engagement with the methodology. You go in, you know, hook, line, and sinker. It's not. I'll do this bit and I'll do that bit. So the second guiding principle: welcome changing requirements, even late in development. Agile processes harness change for the customer's competitive advantage. Embrace change. Even when the customer requests a change late in the project phase, implement it. Why wait for another project to explore another iteration when you can do it now and get the results immediately? Agile wants you to stay nimble and on your feet so that you can pivot without having to constantly reinvent the wheel. Another fundamental mindset that comes with Agile project management and the thinking that goes behind it. If you are a traditional project manager and have come up through the ranks using those techniques, as I have, before getting involved on the more speculative projects, the R&D ones, then you will struggle with that, because you will have spent an awful lot of time trying to design out changes, particularly changes late on in the program, in your project, because of the implications associated with that. So these can be some quite fundamentally different mindset shifts that you are going to have to consider and embrace. And sometimes I think that if you're new to project management and you're coming into it now, actually you're most probably going to find it easier to embrace Agile than if you have spent years and years really perfecting the traditional approach, because that mindset shift can be such a trauma. Okay, so moving on, time's drifting by, we'll have that break soon. I just want to cover a couple more. So, guiding principle number 3, deliver projects, software frequently, from a couple of weeks to a couple of months. So if you're going to embrace change, then you're going to have to give up on your etched in stone schedule, or at least create a shorter range to run your tasks. One way Agile does this is by cutting out a lot of the documentation that's required with the traditional project management approach. When planning your schedule before you ever start a task, the trouble is a lot of that paperwork isn't really necessary, and it only slows things down. So you can see how the lean philosophy is working its way through here. How less is more, less documentation is more time on the job, gives you a faster time to deliver your outputs. So the guiding principle number 4, coordinating team members must work together daily throughout the project. It's like they're taking two different languages, and in a sense they are, where you've got business people, developers, customers, and other stakeholders, each with their own particular agendas, each with their own particular terminology and ways of working, all having to come together in order to be able to focus on and combine their efforts in order to deliver the results that are needed. But it's crucial for success. So this bringing together of all sorts of different disciplines and helping them work together on a day in, day out basis is key. So we don't have individuals that are remote, that we don't know what they're doing, that they are not being particularly accountable, but their contributions can have an influence or an impact on the overall performance of the project. They all need to come together, they all need to communicate in a common way, and everybody needs to see who's doing what, what's in the backlog, what they're working on, what's been completed, and what stuff might have got blocked or needs some particular attention. They all need to see who's working with what at what priority, so that we can get all of the priorities aligned, that everybody's working on the same priorities at the same time in order to be able to sprint things through the process. Okay, we'll have a break in a sec. I just want to deal with this one. Number 5, build projects around motivated individuals. Give them the environment and the support they need, and trust them to get the job done. In other words, don't micromanage. It doesn't work. It takes you away from what you're trying to focus on as a project manager. Absolutely key. And what you'll find is when you start to get a few little successes, people's confidence comes up, their motivation comes up, their enthusiasm comes up. It's contagious, it spreads across the team, and you start cooking on gas. So, the psychology of how to manage people in these environments can become a really key aspect of what we're trying to achieve, which is why you can't pick and choose guiding principles. You need to commit to them all, because they all build and interact with each other in a way that creates an environment that is highly conducive to delivering high levels of performance. So we'll touch on the other guiding principles shortly. I thought part way through, because it can be a bit dry, we would just have a little break. So now's chance to recharge your cups of coffee and the likes. It's 11:15, So if we say take 5 minutes, come back at 20 past 11, and we will pick up the remaining guiding principles, have a closer look at the overarching methodology, particularly around Scrum teams and what's involved with those, before looking at how you can start transitioning into using Agile project management in some of the projects that you're involved with. So I'll be back in about 5 minutes to pick things up with you. Hope it's making sense so far, and look forward to catching up with you again. Right, good morning. Welcome back to the second part of the Agile Project Management webinar that we're running through the Grow My SME Humber Business Growth Hub program. I'll just give you a moment just to get yourself comfortable again, and then we'll make a start. So if you remember, we were partway through these 12 guiding principles. We covered the 4 core values, and we are just sort of chatting our way through these, really to help to sort of define the mindset, define the sort of environment that we're trying to create that makes Agile project management the success that it can be when we just get all of these things coming together in the right way. So we've looked at the first 5. Let's crack on our way through these others. I know it's a bit dry, and you know, it would be great if we were sort of operating face to face in a full day workshop as we would normally deliver this, and we'd have a series of discussion points, exercise breaks. We could run some videos and really sort of make it come alive. So apologies for the dryness, but it is what it is, and yeah, to give you a good grounding in what it's all about. We can't sort of skip over some of these sort of underlying principles, because they fundamentally define what it is that this is all about. Okay, so having said that, then number 6, the most efficient and effective method for conveying information to and within a development team is face-to-face communication. Documenting conversations, creating email narrative streams, even using collaboration software are all well and good, but when you're trying to move swiftly, you don't have the time to wait for a reply. You need to come together, you need to chat through with people in the moment, make the decisions collectively, and act on them quickly. You need immediate answers, and the only way to achieve that speed of response is by talking to your team members or other team people in person. You can do this by working in the same physical space or having distributed teams, as is often the case now with COVID. But if it's the latter, you want to try to keep the schedules to the same hours so that you can at least video conference at key time points. And that creates the collaborative environment that you would have had if you were all able to operate face to face. So, face-to-face communication, people and their interactions are more important than plans and documentation, one of the 4 core values. Number 7, the final product is the primary measure of progress. That means, particularly if it's software or whatever product or process that you're working on in your project, it must work correctly. You're not measuring progress by checking off tasks and moving across scheduled timelines, hitting milestone points, having a project review meetings, but the success comes from the product or service working as the customer requires. fundamentally, that is what you are measuring your success by. And that is what your customer is judging you by. Basically, it's a guiding principle to help you stay focused on what's important. The process is what gets you to achieve the goal of the project. But it's the goal of the project that's key, not so much the process. So, as we work our way through these guiding principles, let's have a little look at number 8. Agile processes promote sustainable development. The sponsors, developers, and users, all of those stakeholders, should be able to maintain a constant pace indefinitely. One reason for short sprints of activity is not only that they lend themselves to accepting change more readily, but they also help to keep your teams motivated. If you're working on a project for an extended period, there's often going to be burnout, and it's unavoidable. Don't overtax your team with too much overtime. It's going to impact on the quality of the project. To get the right team for the job, one that will work hard but not overextend themselves and put the project quality in jeopardy if they do overextend themselves. So we're looking at creating processes that are sustainable in terms of their pace and their workload, albeit that we may have a bit of a backlog build-up from time to time, and that we need to exercise some rapid pace progression where those backlog priorities become high, to sprint them through the process, as it's often referred to. So number 9, continuous attention to technical excellence and good design enhances agility. Whether you're working on software code or something more concrete, you want to make sure that after each iteration, what you're doing is improving. You don't have to come back and fix things later. Fix them now. Better still, make sure they're getting better. And you can use Scrum or other Agile frameworks for completing complex projects to help review and keep the project evolving. We'll touch on Scrum a little bit later. So I hope you can see that sort of a pattern, an environment that we're trying to create here, which is conducive to long-term high performance, where we are learning and adapting as we go and getting better and better and better, not waiting and putting things off that could be changed and improved, but dealing with them there and then. And where we may have blockages, backlogs, and other things, again, being adaptable to keep the pace of performance that we need by occasionally having to sprint activities through in order to be able to keep high quality products and services being drip fed through to the customer. So starting to get near the end of them now. Number 10, simplicity, the art of maximizing the amount of work not being done, is essential. Now let me just explain that. Again, it comes back to the lean principles. So if you're looking to move quickly through a project, then you're going to want to cut out any unnecessary complexities or any wasteful or inefficient processes or activities. Keeping things as simple as possible is a great ethic, so that you're always looking to streamline your process. You can do this in many ways, including the use of agile tools that cut out the busy work and give you more control over every aspect of the project. So we're not just focusing on meeting the ultimate customer goal, but we're also looking at how we can adapt, streamline, and develop our iterations in order to get better and better and better, and take advantage of the learning and the experience that we gain from everything that we do. And the more we can streamline and cut out, the more time we've got to be able to speed the process up and to be able to do more value-added work, value added being what the customer's prepared to pay for as part of the overall management of the project. Number 11, the best architectures, requirements and designs emerge from self-organizing teams. So when you have a strong team, you want to give that team the autonomy to act independently. This means that they can adapt to change quicker. In fact, they can do everything with greater agility because you've given them the trust to act without having to second guess them. If you've done your job as a project manager, collecting the right people, then they'll do the job of addressing the issues and resolving them before they turn into problems. So this is a fundamental guiding principle, foundation stone, mindset change, where in the traditional approach, as a project manager, you know that the buck stops with you. You know that you're responsible for overseeing everything. You're responsible for having to take the necessary steps once you do see something, and that could be quite some time after the event, to then put in place some resolutions. Here, you build the team, they take that responsibility. They take on board the means by which things are run as efficient and as effective and as de-risked and as streamlined as can possibly be, because they're doing it as and when they see it, and they're in the position to be able to make things happen immediately. So the 12th final guiding principle, so I'm sure you'll be happy to hear, but again, I hope it's just sort of giving you that sense of what this is all about, the sort of environments that we need to create to make agile project management really, really perform for you. So at regular intervals, the team stops and reflects on how to become more effective, then tunes and adjusts its behavior accordingly. Another benefit of creating a well-rounded team is that they will stop, reflect, and tweak the way they do things throughout the course of the project. It's that true empowerment that we're trying to instill, engender, and introduce into the way that we're working here. They don't act by rote or just blindly follow protocol, but they think through their relationship to the project and adjust things when necessary. The last thing you want is a complacent team. one that stands on their laurels. What you need is an ever-evolving group that is constantly engaged and looking for ways to improve productivity. And that doesn't happen easily, and it takes effort and energy to create it and then to sustain it. So I hope that's given you a little bit of a feel for that Agile Manifesto, those 4 guiding core values and those 12 guiding principles, to try to create an environment that is conducive to success, that is not constrained and bounded by the traditional project management approach with its fixed plans and trying to work everything towards following them, denying the opportunity for change unless it's absolutely forced in because of some particular problem, blockage, delay, barrier, or failure. And the solution often then is to reconfigure the plan and then carry on with the plan, adopting exactly that same rigid and fixed approach. Agile, as the name suggests, is almost the polar opposite to that. So let's just have a little look at the methodology. Time's sort of slipping by. So wanted to have a look at some of the key elements that are involved with Agile project management, and again, sort of really digging down into the detail now, and starting to look at some of the activities that we would see the teams performing with a view to try to get you sort of clear on what's going on. Now, ideally at this point, you know, hooking up to YouTube, running a video of Agile project management in operation would be great, because then what we can do is talk through the specific activities that are taking place. Not able to do that here, so what I would do is encourage you to you know, have a look on YouTube, Google up some of the excellent YouTube videos that will give you a real insight as to what's going on in a particular Agile project management situation. Really powerful, and I think that that would add and complement, hopefully, to what I've been talking about here, sort of help you to make sense of it all. So, Agile project management. What are the key elements? So, before we look at the key elements, we just need to remind ourselves fundamentally what the goal is, so that we can put the key elements into context. So the goal of Agile is to produce shorter development cycles and more frequent product releases than the traditional waterfall or cascade project management methodology. And hopefully those core values and those 12 guiding principles and the sort of environment and focus and mindset will help you to see how achieving this goal is possible. The shorter the time frame enables project teams to react to changes in the client's needs more effectively. And you can use different Agile frameworks, namely sort of Kanban and Scrum being the 2 primary methods, in order to be able to suit your particular situation. So really, Agile project management is sort of the umbrella term, the term that people refer to as being the alternative to traditional project management. So you've got traditional project management on one hand, agile project management on the other. And as with the traditional project management, there are different methods under that umbrella, and different software suites and programs that you can use in order to put all of the project data into, which will create your charts and your tables, your Gantt charts and your network diagrams and all of your documentation. So there are the same with the agile project management methodology. So two primary methods that we find ourselves using. One is Kanban, and we spent a full 2-hour webinar going through that last time. The other one is Scrum or Scrum Teams, and we're going to look at that a little bit more here as an alternative. Although I have to say that there is a significant overlap between them. They all share the same 4 core values. They all share the same 12 guiding principles, but there are some structural differences between them. Insofar as Kanban is very much sort of more flexible. It is based upon a series of job cards or index cards that can go onto visual display boards, Kanban boards, that enable you to see exactly where particular jobs are and how they're progressing. And it works on a basis of priority. So we are constantly looking to move things out of the waiting state through into the being worked on state or having been completed. So it really is just looking at prioritizing flow so that we've got all of as much activity taking place and all running through as smoothly as we can, jumping all over any blockages that might occur. When we're looking at the Scrum teams, we're looking at something that is a little bit more structured, more time-bound, insofar as we're looking to have certain things done by certain times, and therefore breaking the tasks into a series of small little subtasks to which we can have a number of iterations around them that enable us to define the work activities and then get those done. So very much the same philosophy, but some slightly different tactics that are being deployed. And with the Scrum teams, therefore, we're needing to really get the right teams operating in the right way and get those disciplines in place that enable that sort of time-bound focus to come into play. So Kanban and Scrum are our two sort of primary methodologies, and we're just touching really on the key attributes more around the Scrum teams here now. So key elements of Agile. As I said, Agile methodologies use project teams or Agile teams to manage a project, and they adopt key elements in their work. So user stories. Put simply, a user story is a high-level definition of a work request. It contains just enough information so the team can produce a reasonable estimate of the effort required to accomplish the request. This short, simple description is written from the user's perspective, and hence the name user story, and focuses on outlining what your client wants, their goals, and why. Sprints. Sprints are a short iteration, usually between 1 to possibly 3 weeks to complete, depending upon the nature of the project, where teams can work on tasks defined or determined in the sprint planning meeting. As you move forward, the idea is to continuously repeat these sprints until your product is feature ready. So if you have a particular block of code that has a number of different functions that might need to be developed into it, then you can sprint the first functionality code in, then sprint the second functionality code in, then sprint the third functionality code in, so that you've got a fully functioning module available for customer release as early on as you possibly can. Once the sprint is over, you review the product to see what is and isn't working and make adjustments, and begin another sprint to improve the product and service a second time. Stand-up meetings, or scrum meetings as they're often referred to. These are daily stand-up meetings, and unlike the picture where everybody sat down, we don't want people sitting down. Time is the essence. We want to bring them in, stand them on the feet, often a start-up meeting in the morning. There might be one at lunchtime in terms of a progress update, could even be one at the end of shift or close of play. So daily stand-up meetings are usually between 5 and 10 minutes. You don't want them going over, so they really need to be focused. You don't want your team stood around listening when really you're paying them to be working on the tasks and activities that need to be undertaken. So also known as daily scrum meetings, and they're a great way to ensure that everybody is on track and informed. These daily interactions are known as stand-up because participants are required to stay standing, helping to keep the meetings short and to the point. Really, really critical, powerful way. It goes back to one of those underlying guiding principles of face-to-face communication wherever possible. And an agile board. Well, we've been talking about Kanban boards and how they work in the last one. We can have a similar type of thing in terms of an agile board. So an agile board helps your team to track the progress of the project, so it be customized around the project. And it can be a whiteboard, it could be sticky notes, you know, it could be a simple Kanban board, or some function of some particular software that you might be using that that gives you that space to put key information in that gives everybody the visibility of what's needing to be done and where the priorities are. So, managing the backlog. Backlog is really what we need to be focusing on, because it's the backlog that we are trying to avoid getting bigger. We need to keep it under control. So managing your backlog is a vital role for the project managers in any agile environment. As project requests are added through your intake system, they become outstanding stories in the backlog. During agile planning sessions, your team will estimate story points to each task. And during your sprint planning, stories in the backlog are moved into the sprint to be completed during the iteration. So, agile teams. Different agile methodologies may require specific team roles to follow the framework that you're following, but here are a few sort of common examples. So a Scrum Master. The Scrum Master ensures that each sprint stays on track and helps to remove or resolve any issues or challenges that may come up. They are the team's advocate. Product owner. The role of the product owner is to define the goals for each sprint, manage and prioritize the team backlog, and be the voice of the customer or internal stakeholder. Team members, the people on this team are the ones who execute the work in each sprint. These teams, usually between 3, 7, sometimes 8, can be composed of different specialities, disciplines, and strengths. And they can be teams of people with the same or different roles. And finally, stakeholders. Stakeholders, this is an informational role only, typically. A stakeholder is somebody who has an interest and sometimes an influence over a particular project. And they really need to be kept up to date and informed on the product and the sprint goals. And they have an opportunity to review and approve your work during the sprint and provide feedback during the sprint retrospective, which is where you take a moment out to have a look at how things have gone, learn the lessons from those, and start to put them in place immediately. So some of the characteristics that you'd find involved in a Scrum team. So each team really is going to have its own unique attributes and characteristics dependent upon the makeup of the team. And there are sort of a number of highly desirable characteristics to try and nurture in the team. This sort of go along the lines of, for those of you that might be aware in terms of team building, the sort of a bell bin or other psychometric profiling that you can do in order to get a team well balanced. The DISC is another psychometric profiling system. This isn't quite that, but sort of gives you a little bit of an indication of the sort of characteristics that we're looking to try and engender and build in a team within those people that are there. So I'll rattle through these quite quickly. T-shaped, a valuable Agile team member who has a wide breadth of basic knowledge about their subject, but also deeply knowledgeable and experienced and has the ability in one or more specific areas that are relevant. Cross-functional. Cross-functional Agile team members have skills outside their traditional areas. They might know some basic graphic design principles, data analysis, or even some coding. So they can relate to and understand the customer side of things more often, or certainly what other disciplines might be having to do as part of their input. So we're looking for adaptability as a characteristic. I mean, it's absolutely core given the way the methodology works. So really trying to engender that. So you know, looking to try to bring out a sense of a diverse skill set and know how to use it. You know, no matter what the environment, they're able to adjust and adapt in a way that they remain focused and comfortable. Curious. Part of optimizing and becoming more efficient is asking the right questions and challenging the way that things have been done at an appropriate time. So that curiosity, that, yeah, is there a better way of doing this? Well, what if we did this? What would happen there? Having that element as part of the team can be incredibly powerful. Another key characteristic, entrepreneurial, an Agile team member that is one that doesn't wait to have to be told to do what to do. They're ready to fill in and develop campaigns where they see a need. That self-starter, that self-motivated individual who It just gets their head down and just cracks on with stuff. Team oriented. Obviously, if you have a team, that bonding and working together can be really, really powerful. So team players prioritize the success of the team over their own personal glory. If anyone is delivering on time and syncing well together, they will see that as a win. And committed to excellence. I mean, fundamentally, this is all about putting yourself in the customer's position and being able to deliver what they need. So one of the key benefits of agile projects is delivering quality work faster. Team members who are committed to excellence don't settle for average. They're not hung up with perfectionism, but they're dedicated to always producing the best work that they can. So you can see in building a team up, there are some really powerful characteristics that you're trying to engender and bring out as a project manager. Let's just quickly touch on the 6 steps in Agile methodology. These are the sort of activities that are fundamentally being undertaken. So project planning. Like with any project, before beginning your team should understand the end goal, the value to the organization or the client, and how it will be achieved. The next bit really is this product roadmap and the creation of that. So we're not looking at these really detailed, fixed, nitty-gritty project plans, but we're looking at a sort of outline for how the project might go. So the roadmap's a breakdown of the features that will make up the final product. It's a crucial component of the planning stage of Agile, because your team will build these individual features during each sprint. At this point, you'll also develop a product backlog, which is a list of all the features and deliverables that will make up the final product. When you plan sprints later on, your team will pull tasks from this backlog. Release planning. In traditional cascade or waterfall project management, there is one implementation date that comes after an entire project has been developed. When using Agile, however, your project uses shorter development cycles. These are the sprints, with features released at the end of each cycle. Before kicking off the project, you'll make a high-level plan for feature releases, and at the beginning of each sprint, you'll revisit and reassess the release plan for that feature. Sprint planning. Before each sprint begins, the stakeholders need to hold a sprint planning meeting to determine what will be accomplished by each person during that sprint, how it will be achieved, and assess the task load. It's important to share the load evenly among team members so that they can accomplish their assigned tasks during the sprint. You'll also need to visually document your workflow for team transparency, shared understanding within the team, and identifying and removing any bottlenecks. And finally, the daily stand-ups. We've touched on these already. These are the Scrum teams to help your team accomplish their tasks during each sprint and assess whether any changes need to be made. Hold short daily stand-up meetings. During these meetings, each team member will briefly talk about what they accomplished the day before and what they're working on that day. These daily meetings should be between 5 to 10 minutes. They aren't meant to be extended problem-solving sessions or a chance to talk about general news items. Some teams even hold these meetings standing to keep it brief. In fact, all of them should. So the final bit is the sprint review and lessons learned, or the sprint retrospective as it's often referred to. So after the end of each sprint, your team will hold 2 meetings. First, you'll hold the sprint review with the project stakeholders to show them the finished product. This is an important part of keeping open communications with the stakeholders. An in-person or video conference meeting allows both groups to build a relationship and discuss product issues that might arise. Secondly, you will have a sprint retrospective meeting with your stakeholders to discuss what went well during the sprint and what could have been done better, whether the task load was too heavy or too light for each member, and what was accomplished during the sprint. So some really key activities that will be undertaken as part of running an agile project managed project. So final word really just in terms of getting started. Once you feel comfortable about moving forward with Agile, you'll want to start by educating your Agile teams on how they will transition into their new roles, when they'll begin having daily stand-up meetings, and how they will transition their current work into the Agile methodology. After you establish transition steps and make sure everyone is comfortable with the new style of work, you'll want to monitor and track their progress and success. These are the most basic and important parts of Agile project management. As you transition your team to an Agile methodology, these processes, Agile software if you're using it, and the tools, roles and principles will help you to change your mindset and begin working together to be more flexible and adapt to changes as they come along. But remember, as we said right at the beginning, Agile isn't for everyone. But teams who do use it correctly and create that right environment will experience enormous benefits, including streamlined work processes and rapid innovation. So I have packed this particular webinar with a tremendous amount of information. So I hope I've not sort of overloaded you with things. But if there are any questions that you've sent through, if Peter can join us again, then hopefully I'll be able to answer them.
Thank you very much, Steve, for that. There is a lot of information in today's session. I don't think we've got any questions currently on the session at all. But if anybody does have any questions, please do feel free to send those through, and we'll try our best to answer those. As I say, finally, just for me really to say, do have a look at the upcoming webinars we've got. We've got a number of webinars coming up, so please do take a look at that through the Humber Business Growth Hub. And if you'd like any further support, again, please do contact the Humber Growth Hub, and they'll be able to advise you on what support is available going forward. As I say, it just really leaves me to say thank you everybody for attending today's session. I certainly found it very interesting myself, and thank you very much, Steve, for such an interesting presentation today. Yeah, thank you very much, and we hope to see you on further workshops going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.